I was going to fish a gray one, I would probably tie it in a size 18 or a 20 and fish it for a blue wing olive, but we're going to make it big. Tie it in a size 24 with no tail on it with just black thread and fish it for a midge. Or you could tie it in a size 8, 10 and green and fish it for a green drake on the 4th of July. So we're going to use our gray thread that we have in our boxes for this next one, and it's 8/0 thread. The thread I'm actually fishing or tying with is 14/0. It's called sheer. Okay, so I want a nice smooth thread base on this fly, so I'm going to go ahead and start my thread up by the eye. And here's a little trick. If you take your waist piece and hold it off at about a 45-degree angle as you're making your wraps, it'll gather your wraps one right next to the other. It'll make a nice smooth thread base for your fly. And the same as the last fly, I want to take this all the way back to my barb, so right before the hook starts to bend, and then remove your waist piece. Alright, I'm going to do something else nice for you guys. Instead of the way this fly is typically tied, we use 2 different color hackles. We use grizzly and red, and the way it's traditionally tied, they take long red barbules and long gray grizzly barbules, mix them together and create a tail out of it. That would probably take us a couple hours right there. So what I'm going to do, I've got a piece of Coke de Leon in everybody's box. I like this stuff for all my dry fly tails. It's tough as wire. I think it looks good, and it you know, it's easy to tie in. So all right, so as you can see, I've got nice speckled fibers, and I can pick a spot in this feather. Mayflies only have 2 tails. 2 tails or 3 tails? 2 tails. Yeah, that's right. But we're going to go ahead and just tie in a little clump. Okay, so I've got about 10 fibers there. I want all my tips to be pretty close to aligned. Alright, and then my tail I want to be a hook shank length long. Actually, in mayflies the tail is pretty long. I don't like putting them on that long, but you certainly can. And then what I do, I want to keep this right on top. If I put it on the side close to me, when I pull my thread over, it pulls it right on top. Okay? And then I've just got 2 wraps on. I can look at my tail here, see if I like the length, which I do. I'm going to put a couple of tight wraps, and then this is just a little trick if you want to try to stand your tail up better. Pull it up, pull your thread underneath it, give it a nice tight pull, and it'll flare it up for you. Alright, so on this fly, I want to incorporate the butts into my body. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come forward. I want to be careful to keep all those butts right on top. And I'm going to wrap forward. And I'm going to go to about 2/3. Okay, so if I take the length from my eye to where my tails tie in right here, that's about 2/3, right? And that is where I'm going to put in my parachute post. Okay, and everybody has got a little strand of this stuff right here, and
the parachute makes it visible.
Yeah, so the parachute is for you. It's got nothing to do with the fish. You can tie a parachute post out of calf hair if you want to stay all natural. You can tie pink, orange, fluorescent colors, white. You know, your parachute can be whatever color you think. On cloudy days, I think pink actually works better than white does. I like this stuff because, as you can see where it comes off of this board, it's got a kink in it. That's just about a perfect length.
He likes kinky stuff.
I like kinky stuff. That's why I like Bill's mustache.
Jealous.
All right. So, for a size 14 fly, this is too much parachute here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit out and just kind of strip it out. All right. Now, attaching a parachute. There's a lot of flies that have parachutes on them. Some people will put them up underneath and tie them in. I don't really like doing that. I don't like that bump on the bottom. So I'm going to try to teach this as easy as I can. My thread goes over my hook this way, right? So if I take my parachute material, put it up against my thread, there, it's on. All right, now I need to figure eight it into place, and my figure eights need to be tight, so I want to get my wing about 50% on each side. To figure eight, I'm going to go behind the wing that's closest to me and in front of the wing away from me. 2-3 tight wraps, and then I'm just going to switch. And I'm going to come in front of the wing close to me and behind the wing away. These need to be tight. I can't stress that enough. Sometimes people will actually put a drop of super glue underneath these thread wraps, but if I get it on there tight, I'm good. And so now you can see my wing is tied on. All right, now we got to stand this sucker up. And so when we're teaching this fly, if anybody has trouble with this, what you can do is you can twist it and put a little drop of UV cement or super glue right there and let it dry. Hit it with the light for the UV cement, and that'll make the bottom of this post stiff, and then it's easier to wrap. Jason and I were talking last week, there's a tool called a gallows tool. It's a contraption that hooks onto your vise and comes over the top and holds your parachute like that, and I think they're probably more trouble to set up than they are to go ahead and just try to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my thread up on top of my hook, and the key to this is to get my thread level, turn my bobbin upside down, and I just have to keep the right amount of pressure. If I pull too hard, I'll pull my parachute over, and I don't want my thread to go slack, but I just want it to be at the right pressure. And if I do that, I can wrap a few wraps. Now really all I want to do with these wraps is just kind of gather up the two pieces and bring them together. Okay? So now I'm stood up and I need to put my wing in. All right, so like I said, we're going to use 2 different hackles on this. And once again, you know, I want to measure. So on this fly, I want my wing, the barbules, I want them to extend back to where my tie-in point is. So just by tying a few flies, I kind of know what size I'm looking for. But to measure it, I put it around my post, and you can see my barbules are coming back right to about where my tail tie-in point is. All right, this one is actually a little bit big, but I'll go ahead and use it. Okay, and now since I've measured my gray one, I don't have to measure my red one, I just need to grab one that's the same size. And here again, all hackles, just like deer hair, they're not all created equal. I can't stress enough that if you're going to buy stuff, go take it out of the package, take a look at it, take a look at the, know what you're tying. You know, if I'm tying a bunch of giant streamers, then I just need a bunch of giant hackles. If I'm tying different sizes, I want to make sure there's plenty of those sizes. All right, so like I said before, we got a dull side, we got a shiny side, or a top side and a bottom side. Is that showing up on camera okay? All right. I want to match these together, shiny sides up. It doesn't matter which one's on top, but I'm going to put them together so that they're kind of cupped. And then what I'm going to do, once I've got them all matched up, I'm going to bring my thumbnail down and I'm going to strip my bare stems simultaneously. Now, I need a little bit more stem on this one than I do that last one because I've got a lot more to tie in. Come in and clip them. And just make sure that I got plenty of stem. Okay, so I got quite a bit there. All right, now I'm going to take these two stems. When I wrap my wing, I want my shiny sides up, not necessarily for the color, but for the shape. Okay, so the shiny side is concave down this way, and I want my wing to lay down this way. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take these two stems, and I'm going to tie them in. I'll put them at a 45-degree angle to my post, and I'm going to tie the tips in all the way to the eye and back. Now once I get to my post, I want to tie these in. I want to incorporate them in my parachute post. Now, because I got those two stems in there, my post is even stiffer. So now I can just slowly work up. I want to make a nice thread post here. And I want to bring it up. I'm not really sure how to measure that. I just kind of eyeball it, but I want to bring it up so I can get about 5 or 6 wraps of hackle coming back down. So I want to do nice touching wraps up, and once I get as high as I want to be, then I'm going to work my way down.
It's usually the height of your post is usually about the same distance from your post to the eye of the hook.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so when I get back down now, I've got my hackle tied into my post. All right, so now I'm ready to put a body on this. So what we're going to teach you guys is we're going to just dub some fine and dry gray dubbing. It's dry fly dubbing. It is the easiest, well, if the guys that did the green dubbing on their caddis, it's that stuff. It's the easiest dubbing in the world to put on. The more coarse and spiky your dubbing gets, the harder it is to put on. The finer it gets, the easier it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to teach you guys to do a dubbed body and then a dubbed thorax. I'm going to do something a little different for you just to kind of give you an idea of some other materials that are out there. So this stuff here is called goose biot. And if you imagine a feather, the front of the feather that goes into the wind has got the biot feathers on, and then the back has got the long feathers. So this is just a stripped goose biot. The reason I like to use this on a dry fly is because, like we were talking earlier, you know, I want to use the most buoyant materials I can. And dubbing, you know, if it's put on really tight and treated well, it doesn't absorb a lot of water, but it absorbs some. Whereas these goose biots don't absorb any. These can be tied on 2 different ways. So I don't know if you can see, but there's a little notch right there on the top. So if I tie this in by the tip with the notch facing up, I'm going to get a nice smooth body. If I tie it in with the notch facing down, I'm going to get a nice segmented body. And the reason is that this feather is actually kind of shaped like an L. And that little foot L part is a little ridge. When I wrap it one way, that ridge gets suppressed by the wrap that precedes it, whereas if I wrap it the other way, the ridge comes out. So I'm going to go ahead and just wrap this in. I'm going to tie it in just by the tip. And this, again, this is just to kind of show you guys that there's some other stuff out there and kind of just get you exposed so you hear the words. And so what I need to do, what I usually do when I put biots on is I put just a thin layer of super glue here so that it'll stay down. I won't glue this one though, I'll just wrap it on. So I'm going to grab it with my hackle pliers. And you know, materials like this, when you're tying them on, you know, just to go ahead and wrap them and keep that tension, it gets a little tricky. So I'll just show you. If you guys think you're going to tie it all, I can't recommend rotary vices enough. And I'll just show you just how easy this goes on with rotary. I just kind of hold it to myself and wrap it up. And I think that's a really buggy looking, nicely segmented body. and much easier to put on with rotary than without. So now when I get it up to the end here, I'm going to go ahead and tie it off. A couple of wraps behind.
You use those buyouts a lot for tail
Yep.
feathers on lots of different flies too.
Prince nymphs and okay, so now I'm going to trim it, and if you notice I've got my thread hanging on the other side and I'm trimming on this side. I want to really be careful not to cut my thread. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and dub, and this is how we're going to teach you guys to do this whole fly. So I want to bring my thread all the way up to my eye, and I'm going to use fine gray dubbing. And the reason I brought my thread up to my eye is that I want a backward taper this time. Okay, and this is the dubbing. It's very fine. Okay, moisten your fingers. Tiny, tiny little bits. And this dubbing, I could almost just pull it off like a string and wrap it on. It's really thin. Okay, so just a tiny little bit. And then what I want to do is I want to wrap my first wrap right behind my eye, and then I'm going to come backwards, and I want to try to build a taper as I come back to the post. Once I get to the post, I'm going to go behind it, in front of it, and behind it. Okay, it's important that I end up with my thread on that side of the hook behind my post. And I'll show you why now. All right, so now I'm going to wrap my wing. All right, and I do find this easier to do by hand, but if you want to use your hackle pliers, by all means. All right, so I want to make sure that I get my shiny sides up. And I want to do my first wrap right at the top of my post. And each wrap goes underneath the wrap before. Bring it down. What determines how much hackle you want on here is kind of the water you're fishing. If I'm fishing rough, fast water, I want more. If I'm fishing stiller water, I want less. All right. So now, here come the tricks. How the hell do you tie this hackle off, right? All right, so I've got the two pieces in my hand, and I'm going to pull them down. I'm going to take my thread, which is behind that post, and I'm going to do 4 wraps right underneath the hackle that I wound on. Okay, 4 wraps, and I'm tied off. Now, I'm going to come in and just clip off the butts. And now, how do you whip finish this thing with all that hackle sticking forward? How do you not tie those things down to the eye of your hook? The people that attempt it will take their parachute, pull it back real hard, and expose the eye, and then you can get in there with a whip finisher. I'll show you something even better. And I've been doing them this way now for several years, and I've never ever had one come undone. A little bit of super glue on either side of my thread. Pick it up, come underneath my hackle, right up against my body. 3-4 tight wraps. Don't even have to wait for it to dry. And now all I have to do is a little bit of a haircut. So the length of my parachute, I like it to be about a shank length long. You could make it less, you can make it more. Some people like them short. I take my parachute material, I twist it tight, come in with my scissors, and then when I flip this over, can you guys see those hackles right there? You always get those. I'm not really sure why. Just come in and clip those. Anything that goes below the level of my fly, I clip off, and I know there's a lot of steps. If you can master this fly and tie it in different sizes and different colors, you can pretty much imitate any of the mayflies that we have around here. So that's it.
Is that the general that everything underneath you want clean?
I like it clean. I like everything underneath to be clean. You always get those few fibers that